Chapter 22 is called Game Skills. So we're going to evaluate games, create or modify them, all about cooperation and competition and how to teach the games effectively and actually selecting games. And then we have games for developmental levels 1, 2, and 3. Games are an important part of the PE program. Through games, the students can experience success and actual accomplishment in what they're doing. It also helps them to develop interpersonal skills. We just got through with chapter 21 and talking about developing social skills and such. So interpersonal skills is what these games can help. It also can help them to understand that there's rules that we have to follow. And then they also learn how to behave in various competitive situations, cooperative situations. They may develop large muscle groups, enhance their ability to run, dodge, dart here and there, playing tag games, learn how to start and stop under control. So they have these various strategies that they can apply while playing these games. How do we know what games we're going to play with the students? So we need to evaluate the game. So some of the considerations, some of the factors that you need to examine when you're trying to decide what games to play with your class is this. What are the physical skills required to play the game? How many participants are in the game? How complex are the rules? And then how much strategy is involved? Students have to learn how to cooperate with their teammates and compete against their peers. So I want you to know the greater the number of teammates and competitors that is required for this game, the greater the number, the more difficult the game becomes. Moving from partners to small groups to team games, that's a natural progression, and that's the way to progress in order for the students to be successful. Many games are more effective when they're played in small groups because that way the players can actually handle the objects more often and get involved in the activity and have more chances to contribute in an active manner. So what are some rules and strategies that I want you to know for a game? The rules and strategies for a game increase its difficulty. We already said that. So I want you to know in development level 1, children find it difficult and uninteresting to play a game that has a lot of rules. So in development level 1, you don't want games that have a lot of rules. I want you to know elementary school children cannot concentrate on performing the skill and the strategy involved to play the game at the same time, simultaneously. It's just not possible. They got to focus on one or the other. So, games require a combination of skills. And these games that call for the children to sequence many skills may result in failure or frustration. So we have what's called lead-up games. These are developed for the sole intention of limiting the number of skills so that the students can be successful. The younger the children are, the less willing they are to wait for the outcome. And sometimes fatigue is also a factor. So these are factors to consider when evaluating what games you want to play with your students. With your help or on an individual basis, these students can modify some of these games or create some variations to them. So what are some suggestions here that I want you to know? You can change the distance to be run, shorter, farther apart. You can change the means of locomotion. Instead of walking or jogging, they could be doing skipping or galloping. Number 3, they could play the game with one or more partners. Number 4, you could change the method of tagging in some simple tag games. Number 5, you can make the goals or the restricted areas larger or smaller. The next slide will have a continuation of these suggestions that I want you to know. Number 6, I want you to know you can vary the boundaries of the game by making them larger or smaller. Just depends on the number of players in your class. Number 7, you can change the formation. Like, for instance, there's a game called circle kickball. You can make them in a square, like half of the court of the a basketball court instead of a circle, or a triangular shape. Number 8, change the requirements necessary for scoring. Instead of scoring a certain way, you could change that. Number 9, increase the number of players or taggers or runners. Depending on the size of your class, that can be easily done. Number 10, change the rules of the game or change the penalties of the game. Instead of saying a maximum of 3 dribbles or allowing the players to hold the ball for no more than 3 seconds, you can change that time frame. So these are some great suggestions for modifying a game or creating a new type of game. If we were meeting as a class, we'd look at table 22.1 on page 529, and we would pick a game and we would try and modify it, try 3 different ways to modify the game for the students. And sometimes just allowing the students to do this, they feel more important, as opposed to it's always the teacher making the decision. When we're teaching games, I want you to know these games require cooperation. Cooperation before competition. I can't say enough about that. Cooperation before competition. What are the 2 definitions that I want you to know? What is cooperation? We know when 2 or more children are working together to achieve a common goal or reward. That would be cooperation. Competition is where opponents work against each other as each person tries to reach a common goal. So competition and cooperation. In elementary PE, we always want to do cooperation before competition. Because students are moving for PE, safety should always be your primary consideration, especially in game situations. Check the play area, especially if you're out on the playground in a gym. It's not going to be very dangerous, but out on the playground area it could be. Teaching them how to move in a controlled way, using their entire playing area in order to avoid collisions, spreading their wings for the young ones, making sure they don't run into each other if possible, and then using some type of start and stop signals consistently. We use 1 whistle to start, 2 whistles to stop, whatever you want to use. Be consistent with it throughout the whole year. The book gives you 12 suggestions on how to teach games effectively, so I want you to know these 12. Number 1, you want to place the students in the game formation prior to presenting the new game. It's all about management before instruction. I can't say enough about that. You put them in formation first. Then you give the explanation or the directions for the game. Number 2, you might have to do a trial period during the first stages of the new game because you can't do a demo just because of the way the game is. Number 3, do not use games that isolate one child. It's all about inclusion, cooperation. You have to figure out a way to modify that game or have some type of rotation so that no students are isolated. Number 4, you want to develop a rotation plan to give all children equal time to play. In softball, I have a rotation plan where number 1, whoever's the first batter, when they go out on defense, they're the pitcher. The second batter's the catcher. The third batter becomes the first baseman when they go out on defense, out on the field. Number 4 is fourth batter would be the second baseman. The 5th batter would be the shortstop. The 6th batter would be the third baseman, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, however many you have, would be the outfielders. And then for the next time they go in the field, 1 moves up to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on. So it's a rotation. When you're first teaching it, it may require a little bit of time, but once you do it, they'll get the rotation. But it's so important to have a rotation plan. Otherwise, in elementary, they're going to put the athletic ones infield and the non-athletic ones in the outfield. Number 5, give all children an equal chance to participate in the games that require taking turns. Everybody has to have a chance. You want to make sure that that happens. Number 6, plan carefully before you're teaching a new game. If there's any safety hazards, or try and anticipate some type of difficulty, if the students can't adapt the game to the actual class or the situation, what type of preparations do you need? Number 7, I want you to know when you're playing low organized and sport lead-up games, low organized, there's not a whole lot of strategy or instructions to it, or any type of sport lead-up games. You want to avoid using the out-of-bounds rule, which basically means when the ball goes out of bounds, it's out of play. Let them learn how to play it, okay? Number 8, change the makeup of the teams often and play relatively short games. Number 9, you want some type of way to identify the teams. Pennies are those little plastic things you put over your shoulder, and it covers your chest and back to designate a certain color for one team and a different color for the other team. Or you might have armbands. I have white terry cloth armbands and purple armbands that could be used to designate the two different teams. Or something might be, team belts might be worn around the waist to designate the two teams. Number 10, games are an excellent vehicle for learning social skills, so you want to encourage the children. If there's penalties on each other and so forth, you want to encourage them because they need to learn how to accept what calls are made by officials. That's an important part of the game situation itself. Number 11, help the students understand that learning to perform skills correctly is more important than winning. That's hard to do, but that's what you want to do. And then we use the rule of 3 as a way to simplify the rules. Basically means the students can hold the ball for only 3 seconds. Because if they hold it for longer than that, the game gets boring. Or they can take 3 steps. Or they can miss 3 catches and so on. So the rule of 3 to help simplify the rules. For the actual selection of games, you want to analyze what skills the children have to practice in that, be able to do in the game. So you want them to practice that maybe in the lesson focus and guided practice before they play the game. So I want you to know the drills and the skill practice that you incorporate into your lesson focus and guided practice, they're going to become more meaningful to the children when the children know that they're going to have to use those skills in the game that you're about to play at the next in your lesson. So what are we looking at developmental level 1? These are usually individual games and a lot of creative play with basic locomotor skills, providing the opportunities to practice and participate successfully. And it's all about enjoyment for K through 2. So developmental levels 2 and 3, I want you to know here we're talking about 2 categories. We have 2 categories for development level 2 and 3. We have sport lead-up games and we have low organization games where they might require some specialized sport skills. And then, so for development level 2 on page 546, I want you to know your chase and tag games are more complex compared to development level 1, and they demand more maneuvering about compared to development level 1. Then on page 557 for developmental level 3 games, page 557, I want you to know this is where a lot more cooperation is needed by the students, and now strategy becomes important in developmental level 3. So developmental level 1, individual games and creative play. Individual games and creative play. And here It's all about tag games. I want you to know there's no high organization games in developmental level 1. So as I just said, for developmental level 1, individual games, creative play. The games are very simple, easily taught, not demanding skills at all. Dramatic elements, while others help to establish number concepts, symbol recognition. So what type of games? Running games, tag games, ball games are introduced, and they are not high organization games. Developmental level 2 games for grades 3 and 4, I want you to know, are your chase and your tag games. Now become more complex, as I said earlier, and they require more maneuvering by the students. This is where you have your introductory type activities, your sport lead-up activities, where the students can play them, but it's not actually the game of basketball, the game of soccer, the game of flag football or volleyball and such. So the children become more interested in these sport type games, and the sport skills begin to mature. Again, developmental level 3 games become increasingly more complex and organized. And I've already said, I want you to know that greater cooperation is needed, and also strategy. I want you to know strategy becomes important in the 5th grade developmental level 3. And they have to think. The cognitive development is encouraged in developmental level 3 games. Relays are also considered games. So on page 567 is where it starts and talks about the relay games. So when you are choosing relay games in your lesson for your activities, make sure the students have already learned, in fact, they have overlearned the skills that are involved in that. You do not want to do a relay game using skills that they just learned that day or that week. No, no, no. You want to make sure they already know how to do these skills that you choose in your relay games. So what are some suggestions that they give you? Are these procedures to follow when you're doing relay games? No more than 5 players on a team in a relay. Change the relay teams often. Avoid putting less skilled players first or last on a team. Discuss the rules and for infractions and encourage cooperation. A deceleration zone to prevent running into walls. You want to make sure you have enough room away from the walls if you're in a gym. You want to always concentrate on enjoyment rather than winning. You can add some incentives to encourage other learning and not just the skills. And you want to do a trial relay run to make sure they understand all the rules, and make sure you clarify the traffic rules. When the runners go around the turning point, they do it from the right. Is it going to be counterclockwise or such? Okay, so these are some good little guidelines for relay games. What I like about this book is that you have all different types of relays games as listed here that could be incorporated into your lesson. If you're doing some lessons on beanbags, there are beanbag relays here on page 568. There are also lane relays without equipment. They're talking about all the different animal movements and such, where you could make relays without equipment. Remember the wheelbarrow relay we used to do, or I don't know if you did, but we did. That's also listed there. Then we have lane relays with equipment, like with bowling pins or, let's see, 3-spot relay. I've had that in every book, but they position it in different locations in the book. But you can have anything you want for those 3 spots. You can your imagination. You can do anything you want in the 3-spot relay that they talk about on page 569. And then they talk about potato relay. Then they have lane relays with balls, okay, obstacle relays. Then they have circle pass relays, simple circle relay, circle and leader relay, and such, miscellaneous relays, modified relays. There are numerous relays in this game chapter that are not incorporated into our activity outline that you could possibly choose from when you're needing activities for your weekly plan or your lesson plan. So what are some takeaways we can have from chapter 22? You want to make sure whatever games you choose that they are developmentally appropriate, because we talked about the variation from development level 1, 2, and 3. And you want gameplay. You want them to play these games. It's very important for their growth. It helps them develop interpersonal skills and such. And then allowing modifications or creating their own game is another way that might enable you or the students to meet the demands of your students. And then incorporating strategy for developmental level 3. The students actually learn to be alert and mental and get their cognitive skills in place.